أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين ولا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين وحجته في العالمين واللعن على أعدائهم من الآن إلى أبد الآبدين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. May Allah bless you and keep you well. I pray for your happiness and for your prosperity in this life and in the hereafter. So the topic of discussion continues to be the permissibility of nikah of a Syeda with a non-Syed. Those who argue that such nikah is not permissible and discourage, even disallow such nikah and consider it void. And as a matter of fact, in many communities, this is one of the criterion of Iman. If you view that a marriage between a Syeda, a non-Syed is permissible, you're subject to lan and damnation, and you're considered kafir. And if you consider it haram, then yes, you are mu'min. The level of ignorance amongst certain Shia communities is mind-blowing. It's quite shocking. But that is the reality. And because of this, that some people have changed this matter, the question whether a Syeda can marry a non-Syed man. They've turned it into a question of Iman and Kufw. And they use violence, pejorative and derogatory language. That's very common. Even violence, even people get killed for the very idea of proposing that such marriages are permissible and allowed in Islam. These individuals, what is one of their arguments? Their most important argument is that there is no equality. There is no equality between a Syeda woman and a non-Syed man, because in Islam they have to be similar. There has to be equality. There has to be commensurability in a status in order for them to get married. And a non-Syed can never be equal to a Syed. And that is so wrong. And if we go to a hadeeth of Ahlul Bayt عليهم, non-Syed could be much better than Sayyids. Because Iman, the excellence of Iman, far surpasses the excellence of ancestry to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And this, inshallah, tabarak wa ta'ala, I'll explain furthermore in the future. But remember, the excellence of Iman, the criteria of Iman, the virtue of Iman surpasses exponentially the excellence and virtue of being from the seed of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, biological seed of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And this I'll explain in the future, but that's not our subject right now. The topic right now is there such instructions from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam that a non-Syed man is not appropriate for a Syed, a woman? The answer is no. This is all made up. All these discussions of Kufw, of being two individuals being equal in terms of lineage, in terms of ancestry, this being a requirement, this is all fabricated and attributed to Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salatu was-salam. And indeed, what is so grotesque and what is so despicable in this regard is the worst form of racism that Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salatu was-salam so clearly disowned, and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salatu was-salam so clearly frowned upon them, is attributed to Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam by those individuals who purportedly come from the family of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. I say purportedly because it's very difficult these days to really authenticate the Syeda of a person who claims to be Syed. And that is the truth. That is truth because of the amount of time between us and the holy Imams alayhim as-salam, and because of the forgeries that have happened during history. Of family trees, one can never be sure. At least it's difficult to be sure of a person's Syeda. The criterion of being equal, being appropriate, suitor for a man with a woman in Islam and Shia Islam and the teachings of Ahlul Bayt عليهم الصلاة والسلام is Iman. Is Iman, sexual decency, good akhlaq, and being able to afford to support the woman. Okay, this is Al-Furu' min al-Kafi lil-Kulayni rahimahullah, volume number 5. Volume number 5 of Al-Kafi, page number 347. Another chapter that pertains to this topic, that mu'min is Kufw al-mu'mina. A mu'min is an appropriate mate, an appropriate relation for a mu'mina. Hussein ibn Bashar al-Wasiti says that I wrote to Al-Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. I asked him about nikah. Who should I marry off my daughters to? The Imam alayhi salam responded, فَكَتَبَ إِلَيْهِ مَنْ خَطَبَ إِلَيْكُمْ فَرَضِيتُمْ دِينَهُ وَأَمَانَتَهُ فَزَوِّجُوهُ إِلَّا تَفْعَلُوهُ تَكُنْ فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ كَبِيرٌ. Imam alayhi salatu wasalam responded that if a person comes and proposes for your daughter and he has good deen, his iman is solid, وَأَمَانَتَهُ, and he is a trustworthy person. He is a person who has integrity. When he talks, he doesn't lie. When you deal with him financially, he does not cheat. He's an honest person. If you like his iman, and if you are pleased with his honesty, فَزَوِّجُوهُ, marry off your daughter to him. If you do not do it, and if you do not follow this instruction, تَكُنْ فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ كَبِيرٌ, there will be fitna, there will be mischief on earth, and great corruption. And what is the Imam alayhi salatu wassalam reminding him of? What is this a warning against? That if you do not accept this warning, somebody comes and he marries, and he wants to marry your daughter, and you reject him. He's a good person, decent person, and you reject him. So what will happen? A number of times what will happen, your daughter wants to get married. And you do not, this opportunity comes for her to get married to a nice person, and a good person who is Muslim, who is good iman, good akhlaq. He is honest, hardworking individual. You do not marry off your daughter to him. And your daughter wants to get married. What happens next is that there's bitterness in family. This girl, she might get depressed. And it would happen certain times that she might run away. And it would be great shame for your family and dishonor for your family. And then what will come? Maybe violence, killings, honor killings. So do not do that. Do not do that. Do not reject a good person who comes and proposes for your daughter. Or what would happen is sometimes that your daughter will never get married. And what will happen is when you die, your daughter might, and you cannot control her, she might have illicit relationship with men. So all sorts of bad things can happen because you rejected a good person. Second hadith. Ali ibn Asbat says that I wrote to Al-Imam al-Baqir alayhi salatu wassalam, asking Al-Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam about my daughters. What should I do? And I wrote, لا يجد أحدا مثله. He wrote that I do not find anyone like myself, so I marry my daughters off to him. I do not find anybody like myself. I'm such a good person, brave, honest, tall, handsome, coming from a very proud family. Somebody like myself, I should find to marry off my daughter to. The Imam alayhi salatu wassalam said, فَهِمْتُ مَا ذَكَرْتَ. I understand what you wrote. What you wrote, I understand. I realize what you are saying. مِنْ أَمْرِ بَنَاتِكَ. On the question of your daughters, I understand what you wrote to me. وَأَنَّكَ لَا تَجِدُ أَحَدًا مِثْلَكَ. And that you do not find anyone like yourself. You are so handsome, you are so rich, you have been so successful, you are so educated. You are coming from a very proud family, and you do not find suitors who are like you. فَلَا تَنْظُرْ فِي ذَلِكَ رَحِمَكَ اللَّهِ. Imam alayhi salatu wasalam said, do not look for that. May Allah have mercy on you. Do not expect that. For the suitors to come for your daughters, to be like you, to be similar to you. فإن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال, verily Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, إذا جاءكم من ترضون خلقه ودينه. When a person comes and he proposes for your daughters and you are pleased with his manners, you're pleased with the way he deals with people. He has a very pleasant way of conversing, another very pleasant way of interacting with people. خلق. الخلق. خلق. Manner. Of interacting. Interacting with others. The manner of interacting with others. You liked in the way he interacts with other people, the way he talks, the way he deals, the way he sits, the way he walks. You like that. This person has good manners. وَدِينَهُ. And you like his faith. He is Shia. He believes in 12 Imams. He loved the 12 Imams, عليهم السلام. Yes, he is not hailing from a very prominent background. He's not Sayyid. That's fine. That is fine. As long as these other criteria are good. فَزَوِّجُوهُ. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, marry off your sisters or daughters or your woman, whoever he's seeking to marry. Agree and accept him as your brother. Marry off your daughter to him. إِلَّا تَفْعَلُوا تَكُنْ فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ كَبِيرٌ. If you do not do this, there will be mischief on earth and great corruption. There will be great corruption, great mischief. There will be sins. There will be unpleasant events that will follow. And the root of those unpleasant events will be what? Will be that you did not accept a good proposal that came for your daughter or your sister. Let's have a look at the other hadith. Al-Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam said, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إِذَا جَاءَكُم مَّن تَرْضَوْنَ خُلُقَهُ وَدِينَهُ فَزَوِّجُوهُ إِلَّا تَفْعَلُوا تكون فتنة في الأرض وفساد كبير. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, when a person comes and proposes to marry your daughter, if he has good manners, good way of interacting with people, and he has good deen, he prays, he believes in Imams عليهم السلام, he loves the Imams عليهم السلام, he detests the enemies of Imams عليهم السلام, marry off your daughter to him. If you do not marry off your daughter to him, there will be unpleasant events that will ensue. Now there are individuals, the holy Imams alayhim salam have said, do not marry off your daughter to. But never the Imams alayhim salam have said, do not marry your daughters if a person is not Sayyid. And that is very important. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is an honorable person, a respectable person, and he cares about his children. Who doesn't care about his progeny, right? He cares about his progeny. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's progeny is spread all over the world today. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam knew that his progeny will spread. In the times of Al-Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, Al-Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam, the progeny of Rasulullah and Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullahi alayhima wa alihima, had spread in Arabia to a great extent. Al-Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam had many sons and many daughters, and that his progeny had increased exponentially. The later generations each person had many children, and their children had children. So by the time of Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam, seventh Imam, sixth Imam, they had many cousins, and their clan was a huge clan. And as a matter of fact, there were many uprisings that were led and carried out by the children of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. So, if there's such a prohibition that a person coming from the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or coming from his seed, from being his biological progeny through Al-Imam al-Hasan, Al-Imam al-Hussein alayhim as-salam, such a woman cannot marry to a person unless he is one of his cousins, one of her cousins. In other words, if it was indeed a Sayyida cannot marry a non-Sayyid, it would be incumbent upon Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to explain that. It would be incumbent upon the holy Imams alayhim salam to explain that. Why? Why? Because first of all, they're respectable, honorable people. And a respectable, honorable people cannot tolerate that haram marriages are carried out in his family, in his clan, in his tribe. His cousins are marrying whom? His cousins are marrying people they should not get married. So, the very fact that there has Imams alayhim salatu wasalam have explained who you're allowed to marry and whom you should marry your daughters to. But they have not explained, and there's no mention that non-Sayyids are not Kufw for Sayyidas. They have never explained that non-Sayyids are not proper suitors for Sayyida ladies. That itself, considering the fact that the number of Sayyidas were tremendous in the time of the holy Imams alayhim salatu wasalam, because if you consider the multiplication of the number of the clan of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam that exponentially grew in each generation, you would understand what I'm talking about. So there is no prohibition, but there are prohibitions that you cannot marry your daughter off to a person who drinks alcohol, who drinks wine. You cannot marry your daughter off to a person who is not Shia. But there is no prohibition on the question at hand for a Sayyida to marry a non-Sayyid. Not in terms of them not being Kufw, and not in prohibition in any manner. Why they didn't prohibit this? Why there is not a clear prohibition? And they should, if there were a hurma, if there was indeed a prohibition in Islam that such marriages is null or void or discouraged, permissible but discouraged, let's say that, there would be some hadith, but there's nothing at all. Consider this hadith. الكفو أن يكون عفيفا وعنده يسار. الكفو أن يكون عفيفا وعنده يسار. It's important for a person to be an appropriate mate for your daughter, that he should be sexually decent person, a sexually pure person, a person who is not a sexual pervert. أن يكون عفيفا. You should be clean sexually. Sexual activities in life should be described as with iffa, with chastity. You should be a clean person. وأن يكون عنده يسار, and that he should be able to afford. If he is marrying your daughter, he should be able to afford to support her. So these are the criteria that Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam have explained. First and foremost, that has been emphasized time and again in different hadith is what? Is deen, akhlaq, and then integrity and honesty, and then iffa, sexual chastity, and then to be able to support his family, his wife. Consider this hadith. Abu Abdullah alayhi salam, al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says, "Man zawwaja karimatahu min sharib al-khamr faqad qati'a rahimaha." If you marry off your daughter from a person who drinks wine, who consumes alcohol, you have severed your blood relation with her. You have abused her. You have disrespected her blood relation to you. Qat'a rahim. Qat'a rahim. Rahim means blood relation. The bondage of kinship. The bondage of kinship. That is rahim. Blood relation. Qat'a means to sever. So, if you marry off your daughter to a person who drinks wine, you have disowned your daughter. You have severed that relationship that exists between you as a father and her as a daughter. You have severed that relation. So clearly, you must not marry off your daughter to someone who drinks wine. And marrying off to a person who is not Shia إن لامرأة أختا عارفة على رأينا وليس على رأينا بالبصرة إلا قليل فأزوجها ممن لا يرى رأيها. Fudayl ibn Yasar says, I said to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, we live in Basra. There are no Shia there. My wife is Shia, I am Shia, and my sister-in-law. Yeah, in other words, my wife's sister. She is a Shia, a very good sister, a very good mu'minah sister. But there is no other Shia man in Basra. Is it possible, is it permissible that I let her marry someone who is not Shia? The Imam alayhi salatu wasalam said, La wala ni'ma wala karama. No, don't do that. Never do that. And there's no respect for such individuals who are not Shia. Do not marry off your daughter to them. Allah says, فَلَا تَرْجِعُوهُنَّ إِلَى الْكُفَّارِ لَا هُنَّ حِلٌّ لَهُمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحِلُّونَ لَهُنْ. Do not, Allah says in Quran, do not return your daughters, your women, to the kuffar. They are not permissible for each other. So, Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam have said that you may not marry off your daughter to a person who is not Shia, who does not believe in the Imamah of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Do not marry your daughter to people who do not have deen, do not have taqwa. But where did they say that a person who doesn't happen to be Sayyid, he is not a Kufw for a Sayyida woman? Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam said, تزوجوا في الشكاك ولا تزوجوهم فإن المرأة تأخذ من أدب زوجها ويقهرها على دينه. There were a lot of communities back then at the time of the holy Imams alayhim as-salatu wasalam who were Muslims, but they did not know anything about Imamah, and they did not know anything about usurpation of Khilafah, history of Islam. They were just Muslim converts. They did not care about Shia one way or other. They did not support Shia. They did not detest Shia. They did not know Abu Bakr and Omar, and they did not love Abu Bakr and Omar. They did not care much. If they knew Abu Bakr and Omar, they did not know them much. They did not have any bias or prejudice against Shia. The Imam alayhi salatu wasalam said, marry their daughters. Shia men are allowed to marry their daughters, but do not marry off your daughters to them. Because your woman would be hostages in their husband's hands, and they could always force them to change their religion. Because women learn from their husbands, and a husband is naturally the head of the family. He is the leader in the family. And if you marry your daughter to someone who does not believe in Imam of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, that man would be able one day, if he wants, to force your daughter to change her religion. But if you, as a man, marry a woman who does not believe in Imamah, you can always guide her, and you could always teach her about Imamah of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam and help her become Shia. But you should not marry off your daughter to such individuals. Another quite important matter that proves to us that Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salatu wasalam regard non-Sayyids worthy of marrying Sayyida woman is the following hadith in Kitab al-Nikah, volume number 5, page number 345 of Al-Furu' min al-Kafi. Hadith number 5. And inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala, we'll talk about this hadith in detail in a future lecture. When we are discussing the question of sadaqah. Sadaqah is not permissible for Sayyids. Therefore, it's argued that their daughters cannot marry non-Sayyids. There is one segment in this hadith that Imam alayhi salatu wasalam says that non-Arabs can marry Arab women, and Arab men can marry women from Quraysh. So non-Arabs, Persians, Turks, they can marry Arab women. Arab men can marry women from Quraysh, who are the noblest, the top tribe in Arabia. They can marry. Why? The Imam alayhi salam says, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says, أَتَّتَكَافَى دِمَاؤُكُمْ وَلَا تَتَكَافَى فُرُوجُكُمْ. Because your blood is equal. Therefore, you're equal in marriage. Your blood is equal. What does that mean? That means that if a Muslim who happens not to be Sayyid is killed by a Sayyid, the blood money would be the same. This Sayyid who is a murderer, who is a killer, the family of non-Sayyid could kill that Sayyid. They could kill that Sayyid, murder him, kill him, and retribution, in qisas. وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. There is life in death penalty. Death penalty provides safety and protection for the society. That's the verse of the Noble Quran. So there's equality. There is no discrimination in terms of blood. If a person is Sayyid and he murders a non-Sayyid, the non-Sayyid family could demand that the Sayyid should be murdered. They can demand death penalty, and just because the murderer happens to be Sayyid and the victim happens to not to be Sayyid, that does and the scale of justice, that does not matter. They are equal. Likewise, the blood money of a Sayyid and a non-Sayyid is the same, diya. So if you cut the hands of a Sayyid or you cut the hands of a non-Sayyid, it will be the same amount of diya, the same amount of blood money, the same amount of monetary compensation. If a person's eye gets damaged and he's blind because of you, so that person, whether he's Sayyid or non-Sayyid, doesn't matter. Same amount of money, same amount of compensation. So the Imam alayhi salatu wasalam says, أَتَتَكَافَى دِمَاؤُكُمْ وَلَا تَتَكَافَى فُرُوجُكُمْ. Because your blood is equal, therefore you are equal for marriage. So just as a Muslim who is not Arab, who's Turkish, who's Persian, who's Indian, he can marry an Arab woman. An regular Arab can marry a Qurayshi woman. Why? Why that's so? Because the general principle, if your blood is equal, likewise you're appropriate to each other in terms of marriage. So this would imply that the equality in blood, equality in the court of law, in the criminal cases where there's diya, monetary compensation for bodily injury, and qisas, death penalty, is concerned. Because there's equality in retribution, equality in blood money and compensatory damages, that itself is a criterion for being equal in marriage. That provides that Ahlul Bayt عليهم الصلاة والسلام do not regard non-Sayyids to be unworthy of marrying Sayyida woman. But we will talk about this hadith in greater detail in future. And inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala, I mentioned earlier, this mindset that exists in certain Shia community, that is non-Sayyid, can never be worthy, can never be equal, can never be similar to a Sayyid individual. And if Sayyid, even if he is corrupt, even if he is sinful, even if he has a very low and very stained character, he's always better than a non-Sayyid. That is on the account of ignorance to hadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salatu was-salam. And the subsequent lecture, I'll talk more on this topic, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala. May Allah bless you and Allah keep you well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.